The man lived a life that seemed ordinary on the surface. He had a quiet home in a suburban neighborhood where the streets were lined with trees and the sound of children playing often drifted through the air. To his neighbors he was polite, friendly when spoken to, and mostly kept to himself. He enjoyed simple things: a cup of coffee in the morning, a walk around the neighborhood, and the company of his loyal dog. The dog was more than just a pet. It was a companion, a friend who had been with him through the ups and downs of life. They shared a bond built over years of trust and routine. The dog was large, strong, and protective, but gentle with those it knew. To an outsider, the man and his dog might have seemed like a typical owner and pet. But the truth beneath the calm surface was far from ordinary. The man had once been part of something most people could barely imagine. His life had been shaped by years of extreme discipline, training, and danger. He had served in missions that took him to the most dangerous corners of the world, facing threats that most could not even comprehend. Every skill he had learned, every decision he had made under pressure had left an invisible mark on him. The world outside his neighborhood did not know this side of him, and those who lived next door never suspected it. For him, the past was a part of him that he carried silently, only letting it influence the way he approached life now. It made him disciplined, aware, and careful, yet he chose peace and simplicity above all else. Every morning he and his dog had a routine. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a warm glow on the streets. He would fill the dog's bowl, pour himself a cup of coffee, and step outside for a walk. The dog would eagerly lead the way, sniffing every corner, tail wagging, as if greeting the world with enthusiasm only a dog could have. They walked for blocks, greeting a few neighbors along the way. Some waved, some nodded, but no one lingered too long. The man preferred it that way. He liked observing quietly, seeing life move at its own pace and letting the world exist without interference. Yet beneath this calm exterior, his mind was always alert. He noticed the smallest details: a car parked unusually, a door left open, a person behaving oddly. It was a habit from years of being trained to read danger and react quickly, though he never needed it here in the quiet streets of his neighborhood. The dog was more than a companion. It was a reflection of his own life. Loyal, alert, protective, and loving. It sensed things before he did, sometimes barking at unusual sounds, sniffing out disturbances long before they became visible. People would see the dog's strength and assume it was intimidating, but those who knew it or tried to understand it realized it was gentle with care. The man had trained the dog well, not to be aggressive, but to be confident and aware. They were a team, moving through life with an unspoken understanding of each other. At home, the man enjoyed the small comforts of life. He had books he liked to read, articles he would study to stay sharp, and puzzles that challenged his mind. He rarely spoke of his past, not because he wanted to hide it, but because he wanted to live in the present. Memories of missions, danger, and loss were always with him, but he had learned to carry them without letting them define him. His life now was about simplicity, connection, and peace. He had experienced violence and chaos, and he had chosen something entirely different for himself now. Still, the lessons he had learned were embedded in every decision he made, every move he took, even when he seemed completely ordinary. The neighborhood was mostly peaceful, but like any community, it had its moments of tension. People occasionally argued, accidents happened, and the police were called for minor disturbances. The man had seen the world's worst, and in comparison, these local incidents seemed small. Yet he never ignored them. He helped when he could, intervened when necessary, but always without drawing attention to himself. His goal was harmony, not conflict. The dog was always by his side, acting as both companion and protector. Their bond was visible to anyone who cared to watch. There was an energy between them, a rhythm in how they moved through life together. Despite his desire for calm, the world had a way of reminding him that life was unpredictable. Even in a peaceful neighborhood, danger could appear suddenly and without warning. He had learned long ago that preparation was key. He kept his home secure, was aware of the people around him, and always had a plan for unexpected situations. But he also believed in trust and humanity. He did not live in fear, nor did he see the need to confront every minor problem with force. Instead, he relied on understanding, careful observation, and measured responses. The dog had been with him through everything, a constant source of comfort and companionship. They had survived challenges together, though not the kind the neighbors could imagine. There were times when his past life had threatened them both, moments when he had to rely on every skill he had learned to keep them safe. Through it all, the dog had remained loyal, sensing his emotions, responding to his commands, and offering a silent support that no human could match. The bond was deep and unshakable, built on trust and shared experience. On one particular morning, the man noticed a slight tension in the air. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but his trained instincts picked up on it immediately. The neighborhood seemed quieter, the usual sounds muted. The dog paused and stared toward the street, ears perked, body tense. He followed the dog's gaze and noticed a car slowly passing, the driver watching something closely. It was probably nothing, he thought, just a cautious neighbor or a delivery driver. Yet he remained alert, paying attention to the details, reading the situation carefully. This was instinct now, a habit from years of operating in unpredictable environments. He did not react with alarm, just awareness. Life moved on as it always did. Children laughed down the street, a lawnmower roared in the distance, and birds chirped from the trees. The man continued his morning routine, walking the dog, returning home, sipping coffee, and enjoying the simple peace he had cultivated. It was a rhythm, a daily life that felt safe and manageable. Yet beneath it all, there was an understanding that the world could change in an instant. That peace was fragile and should be appreciated. Neighbors saw him as calm, kind, and private. They might have noticed his disciplined posture, the careful way he observed the world, but they did not understand it. To them, he was just a man with a large dog living quietly and keeping to himself. They had no idea of the battles he had fought, the missions he had completed, or the dangers he had faced. They could not know the depth of his skills, the sharpness of his mind, or the intensity of his experiences. He carried it all silently, choosing to live a life of peace despite the extraordinary past that had shaped him. The dog, sensing his owner's calm yet alert demeanor, moved alongside him with a quiet confidence. They were a pair, connected in ways that transcended words. Each understood the other's moods, needs, and intentions. There was a comfort in this silent communication, a reassurance that no matter what the world threw at them, they could face it together. The man had learned that trust was everything, and the dog had become his truest companion, embodying loyalty, awareness, and love. In the evenings, the man enjoyed sitting on his porch, watching the sun set over the neighborhood. The dog lay nearby, content and calm, occasionally raising its head to watch the surroundings. He reflected on the day, appreciating the small victories, the peaceful moments, and the quiet routines. Life had taught him to value these moments, to recognize that true strength was not always visible, and that the world's chaos could be met with calm and measured responses. The dog's presence reinforced this lesson daily. Though the man wished for continued peace, he knew that life was unpredictable. He had faced countless challenges in his past, and he understood that safety and security were never guaranteed. Yet he did not live in fear. He lived with awareness and care. The dog had been his anchor through it all, a source of comfort and stability that he cherished deeply. Together, they moved through life with quiet confidence, aware of their surroundings and ready for whatever might come, yet hopeful for the ordinary, peaceful days they had worked so hard to create. Neighbors would smile at the sight of the man walking his dog, perhaps admiring the bond without truly understanding it. They would wave, nod, or make small talk, never realizing that behind the calm exterior was a man who had faced unimaginable danger and survived. He carried those experiences silently, choosing to dedicate his present to peace and care rather than past violence. The dog, ever alert and loving, was his constant reminder of why he chose this path. They shared a life that was simple yet profound, a life built on trust, loyalty, and understanding. And so their days continued, a rhythm of calm mornings, quiet afternoons, and reflective evenings. Life in the neighborhood went on, filled with small joys and minor disturbances, all of which the man observed with care and measured responses. The dog remained his constant companion, a presence that anchored him and brought him comfort. In the midst of the ordinary, the extraordinary past of this man remained hidden, a silent story known only to him. Yet it shaped every choice, every movement, and every interaction, giving him a perspective on life that few could understand. Together, the man and his dog navigated the world, finding peace in simplicity, strength in each other, and hope in the quiet moments that made life worth living. The morning had started like any other, calm and quiet. with the man and his dog following their usual routine. But as they walked down the familiar streets of their neighborhood, a tension lingered in the air. The dog sensed it first, ears alert and body stiff, tail low. It was unusual for something so small to stir unease in their peaceful street, and the man noticed immediately. He looked around, scanning the surroundings with a trained eye. Something was off, even if it was hard to pinpoint. From a distance, a couple of police cars slowly approached. Their presence was not uncommon, but today felt different. The officers inside were tense, eyes scanning the neighborhood with caution. They had received a call about a potentially aggressive dog in the area. The description was vague, and they had no idea that this dog was not dangerous, only protective of its owner. The man recognized the situation immediately and prepared himself for what might come. He had learned long ago to remain calm no matter how others might perceive a situation. The dog began to growl softly, a warning to its owner and to anyone nearby. The man crouched slightly, hand outstretched to calm it, but without losing sight of the approaching cars, he spoke gently, using a tone that his dog recognized and trusted. The dog's growl softened, but its posture remained alert. The man knew that misunderstandings could escalate quickly, and he needed to manage both the dog and the approaching officers carefully. The police cars stopped, and the officers stepped out, hands on their belts, eyes cautious. They approached the man slowly, speaking in measured tones. "Sir, we received a report about a dangerous dog," one officer said. "We need you to control it." The man nodded calmly, showing no aggression, no fear. "He's harmless," he replied. "He's just protective. Please, I can handle him." His voice was steady, confident, yet polite. The officers hesitated, unsure how to respond. They saw a large dog, strong and alert, and they saw a man who appeared calm, but they did not know his past, nor the depth of his experience. All they could rely on were their instincts and training. The dog shifted slightly, sensing the tension in the officer's movements. It took a step forward, a protective gesture toward its owner. The man immediately reacted, putting himself between the officers and the dog, hands open in a non-threatening way. "He won't hurt anyone," he assured them. "Please just let me handle it." For a moment it seemed that the situation might de-escalate. The officers exchanged glances, trying to judge the intentions of the man and the behavior of the dog. But fear and caution sometimes outweigh reason, and the uncertainty in their minds made them nervous. Suddenly, the dog barked loudly at a movement near the police car. It was a warning, a reflex to protect its owner from a perceived threat. The officers reacted instinctively, shouting commands and taking positions. The man stepped forward, trying to calm the dog, speaking in firm but gentle tones. "It's okay, he won't hurt you." "Calm down," he said, his voice filled with urgency but controlled. The dog hesitated, caught between its training, loyalty, and instinct. The officers misinterpreted the hesitation as aggression. The tension in the air grew thick and heavy, and the next moments would change everything. One of the officers, fearing for his safety, drew his weapon. The man froze, his mind calculating every possible outcome in an instant. He had faced life-or-death situations before, but this was different. This was a familiar street, a peaceful morning, and a loyal companion at risk. He weighed the options, but before he could react further, a shot rang out. The dog yelped, collapsing to the ground. The man's heart sank. He rushed forward, ignoring caution, lifting the dog in his arms. Tears filled his eyes, but his control remained intact. He spoke softly, comforting the dog as best he could. "It's okay, you're safe now. I'm here." Neighbors began to emerge, drawn by the commotion. Some called out, shocked and confused. Others simply watched, unable to understand the depth of the tragedy unfolding before them. The man's grief was visible but controlled. He was devastated, yes, but his response was precise. He did not lash out, he did not curse. He simply held his dog and spoke to it, as if to protect it from the fear that now filled the neighborhood. The officers were tense, unsure how to proceed. They had acted out of fear, but the aftermath weighed heavily on everyone. The man placed the dog gently on the ground, checking for signs of life. His training and instincts from his past life kicked in. He knew how to stabilize injuries, how to assess trauma, but the situation was dire. He worked quickly, applying first aid and speaking words of comfort to the animal, hoping against hope that it could survive. Each moment felt like an eternity, the tension in the air unrelenting. Neighbors whispered among themselves, some crying, some stunned into silence. They did not understand the depth of what had happened, only that a loyal companion had been harmed and a man's grief was raw and undeniable. The man turned to the officers, his voice steady but filled with pain. "Why did you shoot him? He was not dangerous." His words were calm, precise, but carried the weight of his loss. The officers shifted uncomfortably, aware that they had made a grave mistake. Their intentions had been caution, but the result was tragedy. They did not know the man's identity, did not know that he had faced situations far more dangerous than this in his past. They only saw a man holding a wounded dog, grief and frustration evident in every movement. Neighbors began to offer help, some bringing towels, some calling for emergency veterinary services. The man's focus remained on his dog, guiding the help that arrived, instructing them on how to handle the animal without causing further harm. His patience and clarity were remarkable. Even in grief, he maintained control, a reflection of the discipline and training ingrained in him over years of extreme experiences. The dog, sensing his presence, remained calm despite the pain, trusting him completely. As the moments passed, the reality of the incident settled over the neighborhood. The officers stood back watching, finally realizing that fear and misjudgment had led to this devastating outcome. The man's grief was silent but powerful. He did not seek revenge, did not act with anger. He simply focused on his dog, whispering words of comfort, refusing to let panic or despair take over. The neighbors began to see a different side of him, a depth of character and control that was almost tangible. There was strength in his calm, a quiet authority that commanded respect without raising a voice. The dog's condition remained critical, and the man knew that time was crucial. He arranged for emergency care, carrying the animal carefully to the awaiting transport. The officers followed, silent now, perhaps realizing the gravity of their actions. The man did not accuse them directly, but his pain was evident. Every step was measured, every movement intentional, as he guided the rescue of his loyal companion. Throughout the incident, flashbacks began to surface for the man. Memories of past missions, of moments where life hung by a thread, of decisions made in the face of danger, all came rushing back. He had faced loss before, but this was personal, intimate. This was his dog, his companion, who had been a constant in a world that had often been unpredictable and dangerous. He had trained for situations far worse, but this hit differently. It was unexpected, unfair, and utterly devastating. Yet his response remained controlled. He acted not out of fear or anger, but out of necessity, out of a need to protect and save. The officers, still unaware of who they were dealing with, followed quietly, realizing that their initial perception of danger had been flawed. They were beginning to understand that appearances could be deceiving. The man's calm, his authority in the midst of chaos, hinted at a past they could not see. They did not know that this was a man who had faced life-or-death situations repeatedly, who had trained for years in the most extreme environments, and yet here he was, channeling all that discipline into saving a dog, not fighting back or seeking vengeance. As the day continued, the neighborhood remained tense. Word spread quickly, neighbors discussing what had happened, some expressing outrage, others sympathy. The man remained focused on his dog, offering comfort, guidance, and care. His extraordinary ability to remain composed even in such personal tragedy began to make an impression on those who witnessed it. It was a quiet strength, not loud or confrontational, but undeniable in its presence. By the evening, the dog had been stabilized, thanks to the man's careful actions and the timely arrival of veterinary care. He remained by its side, gently stroking its fur, speaking softly and ensuring it was comfortable. The man's grief was profound, yet he did not break down entirely. He had learned to manage emotions in extreme circumstances, and though this was different, he applied the same principles. Patience, observation, calm action, and unwavering focus guided him through the ordeal. The officers stood back, now fully realizing the depth of what had occurred. They had acted out of fear and misinformation, and the consequences were clear. The man's resilience was apparent to everyone who watched. His bond with the dog, the trust and loyalty between them, had not been broken despite the trauma. Neighbors who had observed the incident began to appreciate the quiet depth of his character, understanding that this was not just an ordinary man. They could sense his strength, his experience, and the compassion that guided him even in the most painful moments. As night fell, the man stayed with his dog, the neighborhood slowly returning to a muted calm. He reflected on the events of the day, on the fragility of life, and on the unpredictable nature of human behavior. He understood that fear and misunderstanding could lead to tragedy, but he also recognized the opportunity for growth, for awareness, and for change. He had faced worse situations in his past and he had survived them. Now he would face this grief, channel it, and find a way to ensure that such mistakes were never repeated. The bond with his dog remained unbroken, a source of strength, comfort, and enduring loyalty. Together they had endured an ordeal that could have destroyed their trust, and yet it had only made it stronger. The morning after the incident was heavy with quiet tension. The man woke to the soft whimpers of his dog, still recovering from the trauma of being shot. He rose carefully, trying not to startle it, and immediately checked its condition. Every small movement mattered now, every sound a potential source of stress for the injured animal. He had faced life-threatening situations countless times before, but nothing compared to the personal pain of seeing a loyal companion hurt. He had learned to manage chaos in war zones, but this was different. This was intimate, a direct emotional connection that could not be ignored. Neighbors peeked through their windows, murmuring among themselves about what had happened the day before. Some were curious, others concerned. But the man ignored the gossip. His focus was entirely on the dog, monitoring its breathing, encouraging it to eat, and making sure it felt safe. He spoke softly, using familiar tones that soothed the animal. Every action was deliberate, calm, and careful. He remembered all the techniques he had learned for treating injuries, for stabilizing trauma, for providing reassurance in moments of fear. All those lessons were now applied here in his living room. On a quiet suburban morning, he spent hours sitting with the dog, making small adjustments to its position, checking for signs of distress, and ensuring that it was comfortable. The dog had always been a source of stability and companionship, and now it was his responsibility to return that care. Despite the trauma, the dog responded to his presence, leaning into him when it could, trusting him completely. It was a silent conversation between them, a communication built on years of understanding and loyalty. As the day wore on, he began to reflect on the events of the previous day. His mind wandered to memories of his past life, his time in Delta Force. He had faced impossible odds before, situations where every decision could mean life or death, not just for him but for others he was responsible for. He remembered missions in hostile territories, moments of high tension where split-second actions determined survival. That experience had taught him control, awareness, patience, and the ability to assess threats accurately. Yet in this situation, those lessons were coupled with grief. The pain of losing or seeing harm come to a loved companion added a depth to the challenge that was unique and raw. Neighbors eventually began to approach, unsure how to react. Some came with kindness, offering blankets or food, trying to provide comfort. Others simply watched, hesitant to intrude. The man appreciated the concern, but he guided them gently, explaining what the dog needed without raising his voice or showing agitation. He maintained control, showing the patience and discipline that had been instilled in him over years of rigorous training. The dog remained the center of his attention, and all his interactions were framed around ensuring its recovery. The officers from the previous day had not yet visited, but the man expected their eventual contact. He prepared himself mentally for the confrontation, thinking carefully about how to approach it. His past experience had taught him to anticipate and plan, to remain calm under pressure, and to handle tense interactions with clarity. But this was personal. He felt anger, grief, and frustration, but he did not allow those emotions to dictate his actions. Instead, he focused on strategy and preparation, ensuring that when the time came, he would act in a way that was measured, clear, and effective. He also considered the broader implications. The incident had exposed a gap in understanding between civilians and law enforcement, highlighting how misjudgment and fear could lead to tragic consequences. He began to formulate ways to address this, to ensure that other situations could be handled differently, more carefully. He wanted to use this painful event as a learning opportunity, a chance to create awareness, not just for himself but for the community around him. As evening approached, he finally allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. He sat quietly, the dog resting beside him, and allowed his mind to wander through memories of his past life, the missions he had completed, the people he had lost, and the victories he had achieved. The contrast between those experiences and his current life was striking. He had once navigated war zones and high-risk operations, facing enemies armed with weapons and intent on destruction. Now he navigated grief and recovery in a peaceful neighborhood. The stakes were different, but the emotional intensity was just as powerful. He thought about the officers, about how fear and misjudgment had led to the incident. He felt a sense of responsibility, not only to his dog but to the community, to ensure that such mistakes were less likely in the future. His mind worked through scenarios, analyzing behaviors, anticipating reactions, and considering strategies for education and awareness. He knew that change would not come easily, but he was determined to contribute to it in whatever way he could. Throughout the night, he stayed close to the dog, monitoring its condition and offering comfort. He spoke softly, telling stories, recounting memories of quiet walks, and reassuring it with gentle words. The dog responded, slowly regaining its trust and comfort. This was a process, not an instant fix, and he understood the importance of patience. His calm presence was the most important factor in the dog's recovery, and he dedicated himself fully to providing that stability. He also reached out to veterinary professionals, coordinating care, and following instructions to ensure the dog received the best possible treatment. His discipline and organizational skills, honed through years of military training, made him meticulous in this process. Every detail mattered, every decision had an impact, and he approached it with the seriousness it deserved. The dog's life depended on careful attention, and he was fully committed to providing it. Neighbors began to notice the man's extraordinary composure. Even in the face of a deeply personal tragedy, he remained patient, calm, and deliberate. They saw the bond between him and his dog, the trust and loyalty that remained unbroken despite the trauma. Some admired it silently, others felt a sense of respect and awe. They had not known the depth of his character before, and this incident revealed it in a profound way. His humanity, his compassion, and his resilience were visible to anyone willing to observe. The next day brought more visitors, some curious, some concerned, others seeking answers. The man welcomed them with calm explanations, guiding their understanding and helping them appreciate the needs of his dog. He spoke with clarity, never raising his voice or showing anger. His approach was patient and educational, helping others learn from the incident without confrontation. He demonstrated that even in the face of personal loss, it was possible to act with integrity, care, and thoughtfulness. The officers finally arrived for follow-up, their demeanor cautious and uncertain. The man greeted them calmly, explaining the situation, the dog's condition, and his expectations for accountability. He did not raise his voice, did not accuse, but his presence alone conveyed authority and seriousness. He had prepared for this moment, anticipating questions, reactions, and possible scenarios. His composure unsettled the officers, who now understood that they were dealing with someone extraordinary, even if they did not yet know the full extent of his past. The conversation was measured, professional, and clear. The man articulated his concerns, emphasizing the importance of understanding, careful assessment, and responsible action. He spoke from a place of experience, empathy, and intelligence, guiding the officers toward reflection without confrontation. It was a delicate balance, one he maintained effortlessly, drawing on years of training, discipline, and emotional intelligence. Meanwhile, the dog slowly improved, regaining strength and confidence. It responded to its owner's guidance, showing resilience and trust. The man continued to monitor it closely, ensuring that every step of its recovery was carefully managed. He understood that healing was a process requiring patience, attention, and compassion. His actions were deliberate, thoughtful, and entirely focused on the well-being of his loyal companion. As the days passed, the man also began to reflect on his own emotions. He acknowledged the grief, anger, and frustration he felt, but he did not allow them to consume him. He processed these feelings privately, using techniques he had learned in the past to maintain clarity, control, and resilience. He understood the importance of emotional balance, both for his own well-being and for the care of his dog. By managing his emotions effectively, he created a stable environment that facilitated recovery and reinforced trust. The neighborhood slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but the memory of the incident lingered. The man's presence and actions had left an impression on those who witnessed them. His calm authority, compassionate approach, and extraordinary control in the face of personal trauma had revealed a depth of character that was rare and inspiring. The bond between him and his dog remained unbroken, a testament to loyalty, trust, and enduring connection. By the end of the week, the dog had regained much of its strength. The man continued to provide care, guidance, and comfort, ensuring that it felt secure and loved. He had faced grief, fear, and uncertainty, and he had navigated it with grace, intelligence, and compassion. The incident had been a profound challenge, but it had also revealed the resilience, strength, and humanity that defined him. The man reflected on the lessons of the past few days. He recognized the importance of patience, communication, and understanding. He understood that fear and misjudgment could lead to tragedy, but he also saw the potential for growth, education, and change. He was determined to use this experience to make a positive impact, not only for his dog but for the community and for those who might face similar situations in the future. His past experiences, his discipline, and his extraordinary skills had prepared him for challenges far beyond the ordinary. Yet it was his compassion, patience, and humanity that allowed him to navigate this deeply personal crisis with grace and effectiveness. As night fell, he sat quietly with his dog, reflecting on the events, on the bond they shared, and on the lessons learned. The world outside remained calm, unaware of the depth of the struggle that had unfolded within a single home. He had faced a personal tragedy, managed it with precision and care, and ensured the recovery of a loyal companion. Through it all, he had demonstrated extraordinary resilience, intelligence, and humanity. The bond between man and dog had endured, strengthened by adversity, and served as a reminder that even in moments of pain and loss, love, loyalty, and care could prevail. Days passed after the incident, and the man continued his careful attention to the dog. Its wounds had healed partially, but it remained sensitive, reacting to sudden noises and movements with caution. The bond between them, however, had grown even stronger. The man understood that recovery was not just physical but emotional. Trust had to be rebuilt, and patience became his guiding principle. Every gentle touch, every soft word, reinforced the connection that had been tested by trauma. Despite his focus on the dog, he knew he could not ignore the broader situation. The officers responsible for the shooting had yet to fully acknowledge the impact of their actions. Their misunderstanding had caused irreversible pain, and the man wanted to ensure accountability and awareness. He approached this not with aggression but with deliberate calm. His life experience had taught him that measured, thoughtful actions could achieve far more than anger or confrontation ever could. He began by documenting everything. Every detail of the day, every interaction with the officers, every reaction from the dog, and every observation of the neighborhood was carefully recorded. His notes were precise, organized, and factual. This was not just about the incident. It was about creating a clear record to ensure that the situation could be addressed responsibly. His discipline in this process reflected his past experiences, where meticulous preparation had often meant the difference between success and failure. Even now, the principles of strategy and clarity guided his actions. The officers eventually returned, attempting a formal discussion with the man. They were cautious, aware that their previous decisions had caused deep harm. The man listened patiently, acknowledging their presence without hostility. He spoke with clarity and composure, detailing the events, the dog's reactions, and the impact of their actions. His voice carried a quiet authority that was impossible to ignore. He did not raise his voice, did not threaten, but every word was precise and commanding. His calm, measured demeanor made it clear that he was not to be underestimated. Neighbors who witnessed these interactions began to notice subtle changes. The man's behavior exuded a sense of awareness and confidence that suggested experience far beyond ordinary life. He remained respectful but firm, guiding the conversation with an ease that unsettled those unfamiliar with his background. The officers, unaware of his true identity, began to realize that their initial assumptions had been flawed. They had treated him as an ordinary civilian, but his presence, patience, and strategic approach suggested someone with exceptional training and discipline. Throughout these interactions, the dog remained nearby. Though still cautious, it trusted its owner completely, responding to subtle cues and gestures. The man's ability to remain calm under stress reassured the animal, allowing it to gradually relax. Their bond was evident to everyone present, a powerful example of loyalty, trust, and mutual respect. This display subtly reinforced the man's authority, demonstrating that leadership could be expressed without force, through patience and presence. As the days went on, the man also reflected on the larger implications of the incident. He recognized that fear and misjudgment could lead to tragic consequences, not just for individuals but for entire communities. He began to consider ways to educate others, to share his insights about assessment, awareness, and responsible action. His goal was not retaliation but prevention, ensuring that no other animal or human would suffer due to misperceptions or fear. The officers attempted to explain themselves, citing protocol and training, but the man remained composed. He acknowledged their perspective without accepting it as justification. He guided them toward understanding the consequences of their actions, emphasizing empathy, careful observation, and the importance of measured responses. His communication style was deliberate, precise, and compelling. Even without revealing his military background, his demeanor suggested experience and authority beyond the ordinary. Meanwhile, the dog's condition continued to improve. It responded to walks, food, and gentle play, gradually regaining confidence and strength. The man used this progress as an opportunity to teach subtle lessons about trust and safety. Every interaction reinforced the dog's sense of security and restored its ability to navigate the world without fear. Observers could see the depth of their bond, the patience and care invested in every gesture and word. The man also began to interact more intentionally with the neighborhood. He spoke with residents about responsibility, awareness, and the importance of understanding before judgment. His approach was calm, personal, and human-centric. He did not lecture or impose authority, but his words carried weight, shaped by the depth of experience and personal loss. Neighbors began to perceive him not just as a quiet resident, but as someone whose insight and presence could offer guidance in challenging situations. One afternoon, a small group of neighbors approached with concerns about other animals in the neighborhood. They asked for advice on handling potentially aggressive dogs and maintaining safety. The man responded with patience, explaining practical steps, emphasizing observation, empathy, and careful intervention. He used the lessons from his experience, not only the military training but also the recent events with his dog, to guide them. His approach was practical, grounded in reality, and infused with care. The group left with a newfound respect for both the man and his dog, recognizing the quiet strength and wisdom he carried. Meanwhile, the officers continued to engage with him cautiously. They began to take the man's insights seriously, recognizing that their initial assumptions had been dangerously flawed. The man guided them through a series of reflections, helping them understand how fear could distort perception and lead to harmful actions. He did so without confrontation, maintaining a calm, deliberate presence that emphasized education and understanding. His ability to influence through composure and clarity left a lasting impression, even though they remained unaware of the full extent of his past expertise. The man also began to prepare for broader community engagement. He considered workshops, conversations, and small gatherings focused on awareness and responsible action. His focus was always human-centric, aiming to cultivate empathy, observation, and measured responses. He believed that change began with understanding, and he dedicated himself to fostering that understanding in ways that were practical, relatable, and non-confrontational. His approach reflected both his past training and his current values, merging discipline with compassion. Throughout this period, the dog continued to heal, both physically and emotionally. It responded to gentle encouragement, gradually regaining confidence in its environment. The man remained attentive, ensuring that each step in recovery was carefully managed. He observed subtle cues, adjusted his interactions accordingly, and provided constant reassurance. The dog's gradual improvement mirrored his own process of managing grief, frustration, and the desire for accountability. Their journey together became a model of resilience, patience, and trust. As weeks passed, the neighborhood began to notice the subtle transformation. The man's presence became a stabilizing influence, not through dominance or aggression, but through careful, thoughtful action. People observed the bond with his dog, the calm authority he projected, and the deliberate approach he took in guiding both human and animal interactions. His influence spread quietly, reshaping perceptions and fostering awareness in ways that were subtle but profound. The officers, now more cautious and reflective, continued to engage with him under his guidance. They began to consider new approaches inspired by his calm, deliberate communication. Though unaware of his full identity, they could sense his extraordinary skill set. Recognizing that their initial assumptions had been incomplete, their perception of responsibility, observation, and empathy began to shift, influenced by the man's actions and approach. Meanwhile, the man maintained his focus on the dog. Each day included careful observation, measured interaction, and gentle guidance. He ensured that the animal regained full strength, trust, and confidence in its surroundings. Their bond deepened, rooted in shared experience, resilience, and mutual care. The dog's recovery became a symbol of patience, understanding, and the power of attentive presence. He also reflected privately on the lessons learned. He recognized that extraordinary skill could exist quietly, in everyday actions, and that influence often came through calm presence rather than overt force. The incident had tested his patience, compassion, and problem-solving abilities, and he had navigated it with care, discipline, and humanity. The experience reinforced the importance of observation, empathy, and deliberate action in guiding others, whether human or animal. The man's daily routines now included structured interactions with both the dog and the neighborhood. He emphasized awareness, careful observation, and compassionate responses. His approach blended practicality with empathy, demonstrating that strength could coexist with gentleness. Observers could see the results: a stronger, more confident dog and a neighborhood slowly becoming more aware, considerate, and responsive. In these weeks, the man maintained a balance between personal grief, responsibility, and community engagement. He allowed himself moments of reflection and mourning for the trauma experienced, but he never lost sight of the present needs of his dog or the broader implications for his neighborhood. His calm authority, patience, and deliberate actions continued to influence those around him, creating a ripple effect that subtly reshaped behavior and perception. Evenings were spent quietly with the dog, walking slowly through the neighborhood, observing and reflecting. He reinforced the dog's sense of security, while also considering ways to contribute to broader awareness. Each interaction, each gesture carried meaning, grounded in experience, compassion, and clarity. Through these actions, he maintained both personal balance and responsibility for those in his care. As the dog's confidence returned, the man knew that the bond they shared had grown stronger than ever. The experience of trauma, recovery, and mutual care had solidified a relationship built on trust, loyalty, and understanding. The neighborhood continued to observe, learning subtle lessons about awareness, patience, and empathy. The man's influence, quiet yet profound, extended beyond the immediate circle, leaving an enduring mark on both the community and those involved in the initial incident. In private moments, he reflected on the incident and its consequences. He recognized that fear and misunderstanding could lead to harm, and he committed himself to fostering awareness and responsibility in every interaction. His approach was calm, deliberate, and human-centric, focusing on solutions rather than blame. This mindset, honed over years of extraordinary experience, allowed him to navigate challenges with precision, empathy, and resilience. Through it all, the dog remained by his side, a constant reminder of loyalty, trust, and the quiet power of compassionate action. Their shared journey through trauma and recovery had strengthened their bond, deepened their understanding of each other, and demonstrated the profound impact of patience, care, and deliberate presence. The neighborhood continued to watch, subtly influenced by the man's calm authority and careful guidance, learning lessons that extended far beyond the immediate incident.